so much. So to start with, because people are still kind of filtering in, we're just going to start with a little warm up and then we're going to get into our shoes. So I'm just going to swap my camera. And there we go. Okay. So hopefully you can all see what I'm doing. And if not, just shout and feel free to put questions and stuff in the chat as we go along. But initially, what I want you to do with your pencil and your paper is draw a big squiggle. It doesn't need to be anything in particular. It can be as crazy as you like and as big as you like. And once you've drawn your squiggle, I want you to add 2 dots, 2 triangles, and 4 lines. So you're going to make a creature. So you're going to be doing 2 dots, 2 triangles, and 4 lines. And the idea is that you're going to make something that is like a little monster or a sort of invertebrate or, something a little bit different. And the idea of this is to show you that no matter how much you think you can or cannot draw, you definitely can create something. So hopefully you've got a kind of weird looking monster here now. And once you've got your weird monster, you're going to practice a couple of different drawing techniques that we're going to be using for our stoats. So the first is going to be something that I call continuous line. And so that's essentially this kind of movement. So you're not taking your pencil off the paper, you're keeping it attached and you're kind of layering it up and down, making sort of jaggedy lines or triangle shapes. And you're going to do that in some of those spaces that you've made in your monster when you've squiggled. So you're just going to spend a little bit of time just filling those in. And this technique is really useful when you're doing hair because it's so sort of layered. And then one of the other techniques we're going to be doing is just a little bit of cross-hatching. So cross-hatching is where you move your pencil in one direction or your pen in one direction, and then you move it across in the other, and you keep layering up like so. So again, you're going to take one of your other bits of your little monster, and you're just going to do exactly the same, kind of filling it in. And depending on how hard you press with your pencil will help you get that shading in. So when you press harder, it's obviously going to be darker, and you can just work up your cross-hatching. So this can be really good for getting those kind of smoother textures and for making things feel a bit more 3D. So I'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to kind of finish practicing off those 2 techniques in your squiggle monsters. And normally I'd say show them, but because I can't see any of you, feel free to pop them on social media afterwards and tag Mammal Society and myself, as I know that we'd both love to see what you've made. And that definitely applies to the stoats as well. Okay. So hopefully you may not have finished your sort of squiggle monster, but hopefully you're feeling nice and warmed up and ready to draw a stoat. So if you can get a sort of fresh bit of your paper or a new bit of paper, and you just want a pencil to start with or a pen. And if I'm going too fast, just feel free to shout and I'll slow down. But hopefully you're ready. And so firstly, you're going to draw a circle, and that's going to be towards the kind of right-hand side of your page. And this circle is going to be the head of the stoat. So sort of bear that in mind when you're thinking about how big you want your circle to be, because that's roughly how big your stoat will be. So you want to keep your wrists really nice and loose and just kind of average that circle out. So I'm drawing it multiple times over and over, and that will help me get a nice round circle. And then once I've got this circle, I'm going to add a sort of upturned house shape, and this is going to be the nose of the shoe. So on either side of that circle, I'm going to add some straight lines coming down into that house shape, just like so. It doesn't want to be very long. And then next, we're going to be drawing another circle, and this is going to be essentially the kind of chest of the stoat, is where the legs are going to be attached. So leaving a little gap about this much, we're going to draw another similar size circle, so average it out. It's going to be approximately in a diagonal line from that head circle. And then you're going to connect these together with a slightly curved line, like so. Next, leaving a gap that's about the size of that circle, so about this much, you're going to draw a slightly bigger circle, and this is going to be the butt of the stoat. So again, keeping your wrists really nice and loose and just averaging out that circle. And then you're going to connect those together with a hill shape. So it's going to dip down and then back up again. So this is the back of the stoat. Then once you've done this, you're going to be drawing a snake shape, and this is going to come from the bottom of the stoat because it's going to be its tail. So you're just going to come out with a sort of little snake shape, just a slight one with a point at the end, and then come back again, just like so. So it's sort of like a snake or a worm, and that's going to be the tail of the stoat. And then returning to the head, we're going to give a sort of arch shape on the top of the head, just slightly below that circle that we drew as a guidance line. And on this, you're going to be drawing two upturn U shapes, and these are the ears. They're quite small, just on either side of the head, just like so. And if you've got a rubber handy, you can rub out that top guidance line. And you can also rub out the middle one, just to make your stoat a bit tidier, but you absolutely don't have to. I often leave lines in. So next we're going to be doing the legs of the stoat, and so if anyone's ever seen a dog sit down, they kind of have that cartoon leg shape, which is like this. So it's a sort of curve and then a little flat bit. The dog would be sort of there. And so we're going to be doing a very similar thing for our stoat here. So we're going to be drawing in the middle of that circle, we're going to come out with an arch and bring it back in into a sort of question mark shape, and then pull it out into that foot, and bring it back round, tuck it up, and connect it to that circle. And then the front leg is going to be quite similar, but without this question mark arch shape. So again, using that circle as a guidance, come down with a straight line, and then bring it out into another straight line, which is going to be the paw of the stoat. And then connect it like so. And that should sort of fit just underneath the neckline you had earlier. And then you want to connect the two together with the tummy of the stoat. So that's just going to be a slightly curved line, just following the two, like that. And next, finally, we want to be adding the eye and the nose of the stoat. So the eyes are going to be two sort of circles. So around the kind of middle of that face shape on either side, we're going to just draw a little circle, So again, keeping your wrists loose and averaging them out. And then at the bottom, we're going to draw an oval, and this is the nose. We're also going to mark on lines just to show that nose. So just straight lines, just so we can kind of see where the stoat is, where the stoat's expression is going to be. And again, you can kind of just tidy up the face a little bit, so take out some of your guidance lines if you want. I'll give everyone a couple of minutes just to catch up. And if you're sort of on track, then feel free to grab some colours. So ideally some kind of browns, purples, and maybe some oranges, because we're going to do some colour on our stoat. But if you haven't got colours, that's fine, because you can do this in black and white and have a black and white stoat instead. And again, feel free to pop questions in the chat or the Q&A box if you have any questions as we're going along. Okay, so hopefully everyone's got your stoat a bit like this, and hopefully you've managed to get some colours. So we're going to start with the light colours. So you're going to start with kind of lighter browns or yellows or oranges. And stoats are brown, but if you don't want your stoat to be brown, you can make it any colour you'd like. They've also got little white patches on their neck and on their tummy, so we're going to leave those white. But we're just going to get started. So we're going to be using the scribble technique that I was telling you about earlier, the continuous line. We'll also use some cross-hatching, which is again what I showed at the start. And what I also like doing sometimes is doing this sort of like just dashing technique. So you're just pressing and flicking like this. So you end up with quite nice sort of fine hair shapes. And so I'm just going to start near the head of the stoat, coming down on the neck. And I'm going to just alternate between different colours. Purple can be really good when you're trying to get sort of darker colours. So I'm probably going to use that nearer the legs where there's shadow. Also, this is very much the time where you can kind of let your creative freedom come out, because all of your stoats will look slightly different from my stoat. This stoat that I'm drawing now looks different from the one I did on the worksheet. So when I was preparing this, so it's completely normal for all of your drawings to look a little bit different, and that's what makes them unique and wonderful. And all stoats are different anyway in nature, so it's how things should be. So when I come nearer the tummy, I'm going to use more of that kind of cross-hatching technique, just because it will be getting a bit lighter, the fur, as it goes into that white. And as I said, I often use purple when I'm doing those kind of slightly darker bits. So around the legs where there's a bit more sort of shading, and on the nose and things, I'm going to do some purple as well as some brown. I often think that black should just be kind of used as highlights, a bit where like how you would use white. And I find that a really useful technique because there isn't really any true black in nature. And so that's something to bear in mind when you're working on your pieces. The tip of the Stoat's tail always is a little bit black as well, so I'm just adding a tiny bit of black pencil there on top of my purple. And then filling in all of those gaps that I've got left, I'm using quite a lot of continuous line. And then when it comes to adding those kind of final touches to the eyes and also just adding a little bit more texture, I like using a bit of pen, just for those finer details. For the eyes specifically, I like filling them in with something that I like to call the C-shape technique. So essentially, if this is my eye, then I'm filling in one side first and flicking up into a sort of making a C shape, and this will make it have a sort of glint in it, which I think helps convey a bit of character. So your eyes should look like this, but on a much smaller scale, just like so. And then I'm just going to add a few little embellishments with my pen. And this is completely optional. You absolutely don't have to do this. I just quite enjoy it. But otherwise, there you have it. There's your stoat. Um, so I'll give you guys a minute or so just to kind of finish up, and I'm also going to check the chat. Have I ever seen a stoat in the wild? Sorry, I didn't see your question till just now. I have. I'm from North Yorkshire, and we had quite a lot of stoats on the moors, especially they used to pop inside the hedgerows. And along the wall, we'd see them running on the walls quite often. So I have. They are beautiful, and they're bigger than weasels. Is the biggest difference when you're trying to look at them both. Yeah, if anyone has any questions, feel free to pop them in the chat. Or feel free to unmute because you're now all allowed to talk. I've just seen everyone's microphones being unmuted or being enabled.
Hello. I'm just checking, but I think you should be able to also use your camera now that you are allowed to talk. I'm not sure, but just in case.
If you are able to use your camera and you'd like to show off your stoat, feel free to hold it up and everything. But if not, then you can, if you feel comfortable, you can pop them on social media and tag Mammal Society and myself. Um, But otherwise, I really hope you've had fun. And this recording's being recorded as well. So you can watch back on Mammal Society's YouTube and practice as much as you like.